releasing personal information about another individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for the damage that may result from a defamatory comment made by persons attending meetings. All liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. The meeting must not be recorded by others without prior written consent of the council in accordance with the council's code of meeting practice. Thank you.
Today, standing for the prayer and acknowledging the country. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Wentworth Shire. Amen. I'd like to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting and pay my respects to elders, both past, present and future. Thank you, Councillor. I've asked that somebody move with the confirmation of disclosure to input apologies and applications for leave of absence, please. We just had Councillor Newman Galley had some sort of crisis at work, so here's an apology. Somebody moved that this apology be accepted. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Evans. And welcome, Councillor McKinnon. I can't see you there, mate. Any applications for leave of absence? No? Sorry.
This one on July, the set of confirmation on the date of July meeting.
First of July.
21st. I'll be for that one. And leave of absence.
Any other? Disclosures of interest. Does anybody? Councillor Wilson?
9.8, Madam Mayor, request for financial
order. Just before we move on, we received a mover and a seconder for the apologies and leave of absence, but we didn't vote on it.
Okay, sorry. Those in favour? Harry? Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
9.8, I've got a pecuniary interest because I'm Deputy Chairman of Pioneer Homes and they've asked for the rate.
Are there any other disclosures? Councillor McKinnon, you're right.
Whatever Steve's got, I got. Whatever Steve's got, I got.
Yeah, any interest to declare, Councillor Hope? No.
Questions on?
If anyone finds they have one coming up, please acknowledge it. All right. Confirmation of minutes was the ordinary meeting held on the 14th of April 2021. I'll move to Councillor Nelson, seconder, Councillor Evans, those in favour. That's carried. Standing minutes from the previous meeting, 6.1. Move in second, please. Councillor Hayward. Any outstanding matters that people wish to?
Yes, Madam Mayor, your inquiry with the General Manager about the position at the Clerk of Court, I think that the reply that you received is pretty unsatisfactory. I'm not saying you can change it, but the number of people I see that need free legal advice that was provided previously is really, really great, particularly Aborigines and pensioners that are aged. They just cannot handle some of the stuff that they served up, and they haven't got the computer skills to handle it. And I still think it's wrong. I don't know whether we should go through the Aboriginal Land Council and ask for more support from other people, but it's totally unacceptable, the reply you received.
Any further? Move to second, those in favour? Carried. one is my report. I'll go to thank you, Councillor Westone. Those in favour? Thank you. 8.1, the Internal Audit and Risk Management Committee, move in a second, please.
Sorry, just before you move on, I just wanted to ask about the meeting with Minister Baby's team. Did you get much joy out of that meeting?
I think they're on board with where we're coming from, and I believe that the meeting is coming up at the conference is coming up, and I think that the minister has a fair coverage of the portfolio. And I listened very well, really.
Yes, that's on Barry maybe yourself or not. No, about me.
No.
It was just Tom Chessing basically. Satisfaction. Yeah. We've got a level of hearing and discussion and all the sundry around many and varied items from Menindee Lakes, Mercury Weir. Was there any resolution of any matters? Obviously, works in progress.
So just the water portfolio, to discuss the housing portfolio.
Not in that meeting, you didn't. Tom did ask about any Crown Land issues, but it wasn't too much to come out of that. Just for information, Council, the Crown Land Commissioner was here some months ago, and they're coming back to have a personal tour of some of our issues that were raised in the submission to the Crown Lands.
Great to take them out to Fontaine.
We'll see how we look in rewards.
Thank you.
Yeah, did we have a move and a second for that? The audit, second, no?
I'll note it.
Councillor Evans, second, please. Councillor Townsend. Any questions? No questions? Those in favour?
Just, there is a. I just wanted to check what Councillor Evans is moving. Because the discussion, as I understand it, around the mobile ban policy might be different to the recommendation.
Well, this is the application under that says the fee and renewal application that will be increased. We have it.
I'm just suggesting that point B wasn't actually the officer recommendation was as per the discussion that was had.
I understand. Mary wanted us to come back to the audit committee to review those attached proposals.
I'm just seeking clarification of Councillor Evans' motion. I seconded it. I just want to be sure what I'm seconding.
I think the points previously probably come into the application annual fee, renewal application annual fee, the increase. But I have no problems with what's written. Councillor McAllister, have you?
I'll withdraw my second then because my understanding of the discussion out of the committee meeting was that the mobile food ban policy be returned to the committee for review. Is that right?
Yeah, that's certainly my recollection, but I think that probably he covers it. And, whilst we're saying the mobile things are permanently increased, that decision hasn't been made, and I just assume that will be made by the committee at the time prior going to public exhibition.
Councillor McAllister has been representing the second, he's still moving the second, another second, please.
I'm happy to second on the basis that it was going back to the board committee for review.
Okay, so you want to take that out?
Thank you.
Now, any comment on the views and comments? Those in favour? Not what do you do, mate?
Nothing.
You're not happy, you're happy with the recommendation that, the recommendation that stands plus it comes back to the audit committee prior to being adopted?
Yep.
You're happy? Again, sorry, councillor. That's carried. Anything else?
No, record my vote against the
You want to record?
Yeah, I'm not terribly in favour of it.
The sneaky inclusion is the James King Park one, which I don't think was ever agreed on. And there were some other things that were raised in the committee meeting that I don't think that's a
Okay. As the report is against, thank you. We'll go on to 8.2, page 71. Move to the second, please. Would you like to move that? I can't see you. Thank you. 8.2,
Yep. What page number was that?
page 71. He wasn't at the meeting, sorry. Okay, somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor McAllister. Any comment, please, if the recommendation there? No comment. Those in favour? Carried. Those against? Councillor Wilson. Rick, you want to notice, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Reports to council, general manager's report. Councillor McAllister, second please. Councillor Hayward. Any questions, councillors?
I'm interested, if I may, Madam Mayor, in the cat management responsibilities of council and how they've changed.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out if I can follow up.
Registration of cats has always been placed through the Companion Animals Act.
Yep.
The seizure of cats.
That's, yeah, if I may, sorry, sort of cap my memory back to that one. So there's been recent advice from the Office of Local Government in relation to how we regulate cats and feline animals and things like this. And it comes down to there are additional registration fees or increased fees for cats that aren't registered or de-sexed by the due dates given by the legislation. So it's just providing more legal and monetary incentives for people to do the right thing if they don't. Otherwise, it gets more costly as they leave it.
Okay, there's several parts to this, councillors. There's determines whether a polling booth be funded for local government council elections. Are you happy for that too?
For $3,000, and you certainly support it, haven't we?
Okay, the other councillors? happy $3,000, okay. And then determine with councillor Evans to attend the Marydale National Conference as the.
Certainly happy with that. I think as many councillors as are available should be allowed to attend.
Okay, you happy with that? The question I had then, are we proposing as a council to install the late fee? Says in there we may do, if the cat's not more than 6 months old, over 28 days, we have it to an extra charge.
It's not a recommendation.
But it's in there, it's part of the copy, it could be put in.
Oh, right.
It'd be part of the legislation requirement, so you're off the.
Yeah, it'd be a statutory charge.
Yeah, okay, any further discussion?
Only congratulations to Councillor Evans on his appointment as Vice President of the Western Division of Councils Association.
Yes.
I think it's good to have Mike represented on those executive committees. Well done, Council.
Yeah, it was unusual, the election was on, so well done, councillor. Yeah, so in favour of the motion that's been recommended. Thank you, Jim. Also carried. 9.2, River Reflections Conference.
I know we not be represented if we can't afford,
We haven't moved yet, councillor, you moved,
not attend.
councillor,
I'll second that. I don't know why the MDBA suggests we should pay $80 for the people who come along here and tell us what the government's doing.
Steve, been moved,
That's a bit rich.
and it's been seconded, and the recommendation now is that we not attend. You got that? Any further comment on the? Go through the comment?
I'd seek to see if council has an appetite to write to the MDBA and ask them what the $80 is for, what they're raising money for, seeing as how there's still, I think, $13 billion worth of outstanding funding for recovery of environmental water that they haven't acted on for the last 2 years, and raising money for people to attend a government event. Serious, I think we should ask for a response to that question.
We're not attending, so.
Councillor Gallagher got another point of interest, which is asking that a letter be sent back to the resolution of this.
MDBA. Silence, no agreement. Fair enough.
I think I can't say what I would like to say, Madam Mayor, because I mean, there's so many of these organisations that feed on the taxpayer and achieve very, very little.
Thank you, councillor.
Very well put, Councillor.
Okay, so there's been the second part put, those who are in favour with that part being what is tacked on as part of the recommendation. Those against? Not against. Now, those in fact in favour of the recommendation in overall. The other part. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you, councillors. 9.3, memorandum of understanding between Wentworth Borough Council and Murray Regional Tourism Board, paper 101. Move with a second, please.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor,
Second that one.
thank you, Nelson, Councillor McAllister. Sure. Any comment?
I'd just like to make the point that it'd be great to have Mark Francis come and explain to us exactly where our funding's gone for the last 12 months. We have had an upsurge in tourism, but I don't know whether it's because of the actions of the Murray Regional Tourism Board. I do know that they do work on our behalf, but it would be great to, in particular, if there's a new council, to have that information shared, but also what they're going to do for the next 12 months for our part of the river.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like someone to come and report things that sign text blankly, and I'm not that certain that we're getting our money's worth.
Historically, Mr. Francis, when we come to present to council, I'm just trying to recall what month that when we have.
Usually early in the year, February, March.
We'll invite him to do all the above to address council.
Okay. Those in favour of the recommendation then? Yes. Henry, thanks, Phil. 9.4, the Northern Management Conference 2021, recommendation there, somebody move, please, no? Trying to keep it in the move.
Yeah.
Okay, are you prepared to move, Matt?
No.
So, okay. Are you prepared to move, please? Councillor Hollywood, second.
I'll second.
Thank you, councillor. Yes.
Can I just make a comment? I think given the content of it, it's a pretty good idea if right stuff and water risk and a few case studies there on recycled water for communities. It's not just the normal stuff we've been going through in terms of river flows and that. It revolves around the county usage and from the director of engineering that told I think it's worth a 10 from the council point of view. Was there any danger would be getting anything out of it?
Yeah, look, certainly from my point of view, last year's conference, yeah, there was quite a varied amount of content. There was a number of things that were related to us, and obviously the other discussions with members of the department, especially with regards to the infrastructure, the integrated water cycle management plan. So yeah, there's a number of things in there that are of interest. We'll call that.
Madam Mayor, while I haven't got any problem with our engineer attending, what really makes me unhappy is we get these nameless civil servants and they trot out their boundless knowledge just before Easter and just before Christmas to make sure that our tourism is stuffed. Moving out is a natural occurrence. And if you're drinking water out of the river, you've got to boil it. So what? And I am just sick to death of these knowledgeable no-hopers that are paid by the government to trot this out every Easter and Christmas.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Hayward.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I also think that we should send a councillor. I'm not available for that. I usually go, but if there was anybody else interested in going along, it's always good to have a councillor there to pick up what's happening.
My concern is that there's no cost. It doesn't say whether it can be done by dirt.
It's definitely a cost.
I mean, there's no cost down here, no cost down. Right. Or if it's dirt and or if it's possible dirt. So
But you can get one. Get a cost. You can spend it for mine.
yeah, that's my main concern is that we accept that all of a sudden it's going to be $1,500 or something.
Yeah, but we've got a vehicle going to go if director's going. These and it's part of training and everything else for councillors to attend these things. If we've got everything going, it's for our community.
Right, there's something to do that in that way, that a councillor go and nominate that councillor, please. And also the nomination of the councillor, an official of the community also. So, somebody prepared to move that?
Certainly move it, Madam Mayor. Fortunately for me, I'm pretty sure I'm no good in those ducks, and I'll be happy to go.
So you're saying Mr. Young?
So I'm going to recommend engineering definitely goes.
I would definitely, my comment would be, councillor Elstone's comment, I agree with that we do need the director of engineering to go. There's a lot of very important information I can see here that could be valuable.
It's easy too, because there's lots of other engineers.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's one of the big advantages outside of, as opposed to the virtual stuff, is that you actually get to talk about different situations with people from different backgrounds and experiences where you don't get that opportunity on a computer.
If Councillor Elstone would like to go, I would be happy for the council.
I would like to go to Councillor Wilson, but unfortunately I can't.
I may be available, I may be on the road about that day, so I could possibly make that as part of the first step of my journey.
I'll add Councillor Evans to that, along with the
So
Director of Engineering,
with that.
if it's possible.
And I'll second. So it's been moved and seconded that the director of engineering, Anthony can go, and councillor Evans with his schedule. Those in favour? Carried. On page 121, 9.5, the draft 2021 operational plan endorsement for the public. There is a recommendation. Somebody move the recommendation so it can be spoken to.
I'm going to be brave, Madam Mayor, and I'm going to move the recommendation with an amendment to point H.
Okay.
Not going to be my amendment first.
Councillor Will seconded.
Just.
I want to speak.
Yeah, that's all right. So the mover can speak first.
Well, I haven't finished with my motion, Madam Mayor, if I may. I wanted to amend 4H because I think charging the maximum interest on overdue rates and charges of 6% is a bit of everything's creeping upwards, and yet wages are still staying in the same place. I would like to be not too extravagant, but perhaps just take that down to 5%. There you go. That's bold.
You happy for that to?
I just have real problems with the 2% increase in waste charges. I mean, we're cutting down the hours in Wentworth and we're charging 2% more. I am not happy with that. I think it's wrong and I think it's pretty unethical.
Other thoughts on the increases?
Yeah. You're not happy with your.
You're happy with the 5%, okay, so.
If I may,
Yes, you
Madam Mayor. Just in the fees and charges, councillors, it's becoming apparent that the servicing to Trentham for the water and sewer infrastructure, and we need a fee and a charge for the connection to those services. So I'd like to nominate that we put $5,000 per service as a connection charge to go out for community consultation in relation to that.
You want to add that?
Yeah, there's an additional charge specifically to the Trentham servicing. To hook onto the water or hook onto the service, a $5,000 charge to recoup the council's costs.
So
That's 10.
if we're going to be specific, so is that all the way along that line, or just from the Trentham Estate section?
From the extremities of the service pipes back into the water treatment.
So for the new part of the connection.
The movement said they're happy with that.
So that's each to sewer and water.
That's,
So 5,000 connection charge each, one to sewer, one to water.
Yeah, well, they can 10 grand before they.
I'm happy with that.
How does that,
It's a
how does
considerable
that
charge to the council to get
previous connection
infrastructure out there.
in the town zones? Yeah. Significantly more, but this was based on a connection only happens every 100 metres or 200 metres, so it's a cost recovery plan. Yeah. Over the 20 years.
do you have any comment, Councillor McKenna?
It seems to be a rate peg, but it's not when it comes to wastewater and rubbish. It's we always keep putting it up 5% every year, so you only have to see the amount of money in the bank for those particular areas. I just sort of think that some stage we're going to have a little bit of a cut.
Thank you. Any other?
I won't support at 4C, and I'll record my vote against the whole lot if you include 4C, because I think it's wrong.
Sorry, C being wastewater,
Wastewater.
or E, which is what you mentioned before.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with everything else, but C, 4C, I'm just not happy with. I don't think it's right.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I thought that's the Women's issue with 4E being waste.
C.
Wastewater, sewer charges.
I thought it was E, council building.
No, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay, just so we
Raw water, filter charge. No, it's a waste.
Domestic waste.
Domestic waste.
Yes.
That's what I said in the first place.
Movement and second are happy with the recommendations as it's now legal.
Yeah, I just wanted to check where the $5,000 connection charge for the Trentham goes, where that would sit. Would that be I under
The
yeah.
No,
Yes, I'm happy with that.
that sewer line, is that PVC or is that pressure? Pressure. You're 5 grand looking at that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, it's been an addition that there've been additional I. Have you got that? The records got that?
Yeah.
Okay, those in favour? Anybody have any more?
50-50 on it.
Okay, and what about you, Councillor McKinnon?
Against?
Okay.
Again,
Word is carried, have those against?
and I want my vote recorded because I think it's wrong.
Okay, that's fine. Just two again, you want yours recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, so councillors Wheelman, Elson, want to vote against the motion recorded?
And McKinnon.
No, he voted
Oh,
for it.
you voted for it.
No, no, it's
He did, sorry, oh, in that case, it's still carried. Now, 9.6, the monthly investment report, on page 219. Movement and second to the next please. Councillor Hayward, thank you. Any comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor
How many amounts of money are in our bank because we haven't done the work?
What do you mean by we haven't done the work, councillor?
Well, we've projected it, we've got the money for them.
I think that That is,
and the work hasn't been done.
that is answered in the report. The amount of, I think that in other parts of the body of the.
It amounts to millions.
A lot of that's the work that's not going to start till next financial year. We've been paid in advance for a number of projects which aren't.
Through the stimulus package, the government full paid us advance payment. But the delivery date of the projects remains that in some cases December, some on June, and further to that, there's no line in December 2022. So the government has full paid, but it doesn't mind because they didn't pay at the end of the project. They've given us opportunity to deliver the project further into the time run.
Councillors, the problem that I have is that we're still, to the Minister of Finance, the Director of Finance, is that we're still on our paperwork saying we're going to get around $24,000 a month in interest. Last year I raised was we had a huge amount of money was there, but after this month we've got 9,000. I think the figure is unrealistic. I don't think we're going to obtain $24,000 a month on this. So I have a concern that we're over
I was just wondering, Madam Mayor, whether the Director of Finance and Policy might be able to cast some eyes into his magic mirror ball off the back of last night's budget and sort of see whether we might be expecting in New South Wales a budget that might be favourable to interest rates going up. It was a fairly interesting budget.
I suppose the Federal Reserve Bank sets the interest rate. They've indicated this time last year that they were planning on holding the rate at 0.1% for years. And so we're 12 months into that. The latest commentary I've heard is that they're not wavering from that position at this point in time. So I'm anticipating that rates will stay at a similar level for at least the next 12 months. The only thing that I can see pushing it up is if the economy keeps progressing the way it's doing, if housing prices continue to keep increasing the way they are, and there's some inflationary pressures that may make them change their minds a little bit earlier than what they are. But they had a meeting last Tuesday where they kept it the same, and the commentary out of that was that they're holding their position as they have for the last 12 months.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Those in favour?
I just have one quick question, if I can. Sorry.
Thank you.
The Director of Finance. The sewer project, we haven't pulled $7 million out of that sewer fund. We haven't done that yet.
So we've done the rationalisation project. Yeah, we've been paying that off over a couple of years, so we've been spending that over 2.5 years on that project.
So our contribution of $2 million has come out of that restricted fund, and we've still got 2.6 there at the moment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Last question, sorry. Can we get any feedback on our T Corp loan?
No, we're still waiting. I haven't heard anything about that. We've written to the Minister as per the resolution we've cancelled and haven't had a response.
Any further questions?
Well, Madam Mayor, I know we receive about 1% if we're lucky for the money we get, or less. Why are we paying a lot more money for our borrowings? What's the logic in it? I mean, it's got to be just a dead loss.
We're trying to get on with it.
I'm slowly working through each of those loans to try and refinance them. So I have had one, that one which we signed off on 2 or 3 months ago, we reduced that from around about 4% down to 1.8%. That was finally signed off about 2 weeks ago. I'm having discussions with the other ones about the same.
Quite often we have a penalty for adjusting as well, which makes it fairly difficult.
Yeah, in some cases, the penalty is the reduced interest rate compensates for that penalty. In some of the other ones, in some of the other conversations I've had, the savings you get from having a lower rate is actually less than what you pay for rate costs. So.
Okay, 9.6 being moved second recommendation, those in favour? Thank you. 9.7 on 225. Thank you, Councillor Pallister, second Councillor Evans. Any comment, please? Those in favour? It's carried. 9.8, requests for financial assistance on 229. Movement from council members leaving the room.
Yeah, it's under separate cover.
Moved to Councillor McAllister, second Councillor Haywood. If you come to the back of the attachments, got all the
Sorry, somebody needs to close the door. Can I just check as well? So I have been sitting on the North West Rail Alliance. I've been for about 12 months. Should I be here or should I leave? Because I'm a council delegate.
Well, you probably should be out the door, but I don't think we can get out.
I think it's council delegate. I should speak with you.
I mean, it's actually the councillors.
It's up to me.
Yeah, it's your prerogative, whether you think you have it, whether you think you haven't.
I don't. My question, Madam Mayor, was going to be about the Community Bank Wentworth and District request for refund of hire fees, so that the board can do a strategic planning meeting. I would suggest that the bank that charges us more fees than we can probably afford to pay higher fees on the board.
I have to disagree. I'm sorry, Councillor, but I think given what they contribute around the community should be taken into everything to make decisions. They are substantial supporters right across Australia.
And they're just about to go into a fairly large sum of money for the community at the moment.
Support. From a support point of view, I'm certainly in favour of support.
Does anybody have any, Councillor McKenna, do you have any comments on the request for financial assistance?
No.
No? Councillor Evans? I think it's up to go around if you want to know. Those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Councillor Wilson taking please. .9, 231, determination of council remuneration for 21-22, remove it please.
I'll move option A,
Councillor
maximum allowable.
Councillor Pallister, Councillor Haywood, are there any comments? No
My
comment?
comment would only be that we're right down the bottom end of the rung in terms of remuneration for councillors. And in an election year, if we're trying to attract councillors to take on this mainly voluntary position, we're not really offering them a hell of a lot. So, you know, it's as much as we can, I think is going to count for something. Bit of incentive.
No other comments? Those in favour, recommendation? Thank you, councillors. 9.10, licence agreement to occupy, secure and maintain a portion of Alice Street, Wentworth, on page 233. Mover, councillor Hayward, seconder, councillor.
Mine is to refuse the application. This has been tried 2 or 3 years ago. The same person tried to claim that area as a public asset, access to the river. I drove down this morning to have a look. There's a turnaround place there. I think it should be left as a street.
We just seek clarification in terms of the process. Councillor Elton was moving in support of the motion. Councillor Hayward, sorry.
Okay, so in that case, councillor, you moved it, did you say?
I moved it.
Can we have a second and know where it came from? Councillor McAllister, okay. Withdraw your councillor. Okay. Can you finish? Sorry.
Yeah, I just think that it's public land and it's access to the river for public. It should be left that way.
I second that motion because I also have been down there a couple of times, and really the number of people that want access to the river is incredible, and it's a very, very wide street. I wouldn't be against a little bit of more land for him, but really to close that off would be unacceptable.
Point of clarification, we're doing on any note and that, but not after the 450 road.
Yeah, that's correct. They're not after the closure of the road, they're just after the, if you can see the, look at the map on page 235, if you look at the black line, that's the indicated area that they would like to sort of maintain.
It's a
10 metres.
poorly drawn map then, isn't it?
10 metres.
The problem is when you close the black line, it then doesn't permit you to turn around down at the river. At the moment,
No, that's fine. I just wanted, Councillor Williams sort of said we'll close the whole lot. I just wanted a point of clarification around the map.
There was a key on the map.
It looks like it's closed on this map anyway.
It does, yeah, I was looking at the red line as well.
Red lines are stormwater. Yeah.
Doesn't say.
so it's natural bushland and should be left as such. And you take the bottom bit, there's no way you'll turn around, and that was his objective. Last time was it would close off. I went down with my vehicle and where roughly you would turn around would be nearly impossible. So it allows, the way it is at the moment, you can drive down there, you've got access to the river, you want to fish or just look at the water, you can still turn around and get back out.
Madam Mayor, we've agreed for this private annexation of roads down near Gold, and the applicant just fenced the whole lot off, and I don't think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I'm actually in favour of it. We don't see the need for public access in the little residential area. Councillor's call.
Councillor McKinnon, have you an opinion on this?
I just leave it as it is.
Yeah, as it is. Alright. Any further comments? Been moved and seconded that we refuse the application. Those in favour? Carried.
I'm going to excuse myself from this one because 54 to 55 2021/008 is an adjoining property of mine. Sorry, I didn't mention that.
On page 226, delegated authority approval to the end of April. there's a recommendation there, councillor, somebody move. Thank you, councillor Millstone, I'm looking.
Yeah.
Moved by councillor Evans. Comments, questions, queries? Are they ready?
Just a comment I'd like to make is that it's happening most of the time in very good time frame.
Still about 21 days.
Okay, no questions anywhere else? Those in favour? Division, those in favour? Thank you, it's carried. Thank you very much. Yeah, councillor, tell us the backing, please. It's, carried. 9.12, projects and works report update, page 239, somebody move it please. McAllister, second councillor Evans. Are there any questions?
The Junction Island Bridge, what's the latest on that?
Funding's been secured. Looking at designs and computations and things now ready to get it tender shortly.
And taking into account the allowance for small machinery and items to be able to access, which entitled the recent fire.
So the funding's been approved.
Secured funding through the local roads and community infrastructure fund, I think it was.
Any further questions, councillors? Any questions, councillor McKenna?
No.
No, okay. Those in favour of the recommendation? Carried. Now, then, on page 255, notice of the promotion, questions and votes. Does anybody have any, please, not to go around the room. Have you anything, councillor McKinnon, on notice of the motion?
I don't think so.
Thank you, councillor Evans. Councillor Bill.
No.
Councillor Hayward. Councillor McAllister.
I did have one, but it hasn't appeared.
Yeah, so would you like, that's wholly my fault. So
Yes, I did understand it, but it was sneaking in. I think I might have gotten it in late, so it may well be my fault. No,
having enough to share with me.
okay.
Would you like to raise it?
Yes, if I may. We'll just get copies around to everybody. Thank you. Madam Mayor, Council might be aware that floodplain harvesting rules have been brought into the upper house and disallowed. Council may or may not also be aware that 19 of the 20 water resource plans submitted by the New South Wales Government to the Murray-Darling Basin Authority have been returned, requiring amendments. The motion that I would like to put to Council is that Council write to the New South Wales Environment Minister, urging him not to provide concurrence to the water sharing plans, which contain floodplain harvesting rules. The reason for this, and I'll go into a little bit of detail to explain the difference between the water resource plans and the water sharing plans. By way of background, the Environment Minister has a statutory obligation to provide concurrence to water sharing plans to ensure they align with the water resource plans, which is a legislative requirement of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. On the most recent evidence provided by Slattery and Johnson, to which this council provided some and received some detailed information and report, there are significant issues with the proposed floodplain harvesting plans, and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority PEEPS meeting, which is a regular meeting that the MDVA has with certain peak groups, They are advised that 19 of the 20 water resource plans submitted by the New South Wales Government have been rejected pending amendments. This presents a great level of concern for signing concurrence on water sharing plans which sit under and are guided by water resource plans that have been rejected as not meeting basin requirements by the MDBA, and for this reason the Environment Minister must not sign concurrence. Just if I may put it as simply as I can, and it's not simple, the water resource plans are legislated through the Murray-Darling Basin Plan as a requirement for each state. I think New South Wales had 33 of them. Several of them have already been through the process and accepted and are currently functioning. So that basically is a legislative instrument that the state agrees to the rules that all of the states of the Murray-Darling Basin and the Commonwealth have agreed under the Basin Plan is how water must be used in those different areas. The remaining 19 which have been returned have issues in them. 4, I think, of those, I may be wrong, don't quote me, have floodplain harvesting rules written in them. This council has for some time now been seeking to, I suppose, shine a bit of light on the cumulative downstream impacts of floodplain harvesting. That notion, anecdotally received by a lot of our ratepayers, has been supported by the Slattery and Johnson report, which also showed there was a 142% increase in the incidence of capture and storage available to take floodplain harvesting, which is not measured. The fact that the latest rules around or regulations around floodplain harvesting have once again been rejected by the New South Wales Upper House or disallowed, to use the correct terminology, reveals, I think, significant concerns about, in particular, the lack of measurement and the lack of any clear process for, I suppose, implementing rules around floodplain harvesting. It's been a point of contention. Under the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, I think New South Wales and Queensland are to share 210 gigalitres of floodplain harvesting. Estimates would suggest that you could probably add at least an extra 0 on the end of that, but again, it's not measured, so we have no certainty. Now, what the risk is, and if you're following me, thank you for persevering. The fact that the water resource plans have been rejected means that they don't need to go back out to public consultation because they've already been received by the MDBA. So what this means is the water resource plans can be worked on, noodling away, bureaucrats in Sydney coming up with whatever rules they want to put in there. And in the meantime, the New South Wales Government is still punching out these water sharing plans, which have, as I've said, a few of them have floodplain harvesting rules in them. The water sharing plans are supposed to sit under the water resource plans. They're not a legislative instrument, but they're more guidelines around how the resource is used valley by valley. So the risk is the water sharing plans get finalised before the water resource plans have been ticked off through the appropriate channels. The only way to prevent that from happening is to put a bit of pressure on the Environment Minister to adhere to his statutory obligations and make sure that what he's signing concurrence on is tickety-boo, as it were. So I would urge this council to support the motion that council write to the New South Wales Environment Minister, urging him not to provide concurrence to the water sharing plans which contain floodplain harvesting rules. They would be the Border Rivers, the Guida, the Namoy and the Macquarie, I think. And I think that's all. Is there a big one? And the Barwon Valley, which is about to be released.
So that floodplain harvesting, it had another rule in there where they could capture 5 years water.
Yeah, 500% of the face value of allocation.
500 on all, with the exception of
Guida, which was 600.
Guida, which is 600, and the Barwon Darling is 300.
Yeah. So that would have a big impact.
Big impact, significant continuing risk to this end of the river.
That's a fair bit to digest in what you just said. How can he sign off on something the FDBA is rejected?
No, so he's not signing off on the water resource plans. That's what the FDBA has rejected. The water sharing plans, which, as I said, are not the legislative instrument, but the guidelines, if you like, are his to sign off on.
Councillor Callus, I believe that's a motion. To second it, Councillor Hager to second it. Any further comment?
Did that make sense?
I'd probably like to have a study and digest it. I'm certainly not against it. I think our community, we've all been against the floodplain harvesting in particular, and that needs to be continuously emphasised to state government. But it's a very difficult one when you see the massive water that was up there in this event. How do you actually stop it from running where it runs? The only way you'd ever really get rid of it would be to fill all the storage that's in, and that's never going to happen. So.
And to speak to that, of course, there are significant works, which you're probably referring to there, that's holding the water. We know that the previous water minister has retrospectively given approvals where previously they weren't there for a lot of them. And so there are a significant amount of works that may well prevent the water getting into the river, for a start, which haven't had an environmental impact assessment. And that needs to be done. That's one of the reasons why the upper house also voted to disallow this. A couple of different things happening here.
I just have a little understanding of how big this event was, and that there was water for 100-mile circles, and the floodplain does drain into the river as per the Water New South Wales reports in their runoff and flow rates. And I just have a bit of trouble getting my head around how do you actually prevent it. I know you can legislate it and do paper. Anyway, long story short of this, we should support our community or against floodplain homes.
Well, we get no benefit out of it, do we?
No.
We don't get any benefit out of this harvesting. Once it gets into the Barwon Valley, that's the end of it. We don't see anything. So I'm with Councillor McAllister there. I support what she's put forward.
Any other councillors like to speak to it? No, fine, no, Craig.
I think there's probably two issues that I've been looking at. Obviously a very complex scenario here, which very few of us probably understand very well, certainly myself. But there's two parts to this. There's a harvesting, which is proven now there's a considerable amount of storage area up there for water. And then there's the annual usage of the water, which are two very separate issues. So the annual usage of if you listen to one side, the annual usage of the water is a lot less than the harvested water. So that can only be taken as usable water over a period of time. Where I don't understand how you're going to change that is the only way to do it is, as also said, fill up dams and let it all run out each time it comes down. So there's a difficult scenario there. Is the use of the actual water that those farmers can use is limited annually. And that figure hasn't been really well spoken about.
So it's been accurately measured.
They're not measured, are they?
Mr.
No, they're
Kennedy?
not metered, that's right.
Well, the intention is that they will be, but until that their plan is accepted, that won't happen either.
But I can't see
How
how,
that's going to be done.
some of this floodplain harvesting, how they're gonna measure it. It's forced into dams, so the only way it can be measured is when they put it into their storage stand with the pump, and in the meantime, all evaporation and everything is lost to us.
And evaporate the north.
No, well, that's not true though. The Slattery Johnson report showed that they were able to measure it using LiDAR and other techniques, and the figure they came up with was the same as the department's figure.
Yeah, it's not.
So it can be measured.
Storages, yeah.
Yeah.
On
I
pump
think it was
storage.
pretty close.
Yeah.
But the annual usage allowed, and that's metered through pumps on the farm, is another issue.
But there, we're talking about a cap of 4 gigalitres, wasn't it, Tim, for the north?
500.
500, I mean,
Basically.
but it's, they've got capacity of 1,700 to go into their dams. That's without any of the, that's all the big dams. So and that's where they're looking at for 5 years. They fill all the dams up, they've got water maybe for only 4 years, but the next flood comes along and they take it all again. We'd never see water down the Menindee.
Which is the issue, that the head of water doesn't get a chance to push as far as it can downriver, and the river drying out, the lake's drying out, means that it requires more water to wet up the whole system.
And our aquifer system around, nobody calculates that. With Menindee, they say nothing, but when you talk to farmers that are out and bores out from the river and the lakes, they get saltier and saltier as the lakes dry up. So the aquifer is got to be filled up too.
That's right. It's counted as a loss.
Yeah.
Just like evaporation.
Councillors, I think we're going to talk about the debt actually. Or debt, so we'll vote on it. Those, the motion, those in favour of the motion? Yeah, okay, so it's carried. Thank you. Any further motions or questions of note? Councillor?
Only be happy with what I brought up in the briefing in terms of that other meetings with the caravan park and
Well, just, if you want that one, I'll just make one point of clarification. Extraordinary meetings, the council normally categorised for one particular subject or topic, so obviously we can canvass it for projects or something.
perhaps we could focus on the park and have a briefing of others.
Would you like to do that? Thank you.
Okay. Once we've got the information in the caravan park circulated to all councillors, and they've had the opportunity to review it, that we call an extraordinary meeting to discuss where to. Can I have the others, or that's brief?
For that, you would see an update on projects.
Which is the Bowling Green Long Day Care Centre and Murray Street.
Did you hear that, Councillor McKenna?
Yep,
No?
nothing.
In the second, that's all we're doing there. Or anyone said to council available? Any further comment? No comment. You've got that, you've got the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Have you anything further, Councillor Rostow? Councillor McKinnon, do you have any notices of motion or,
No.
notice? No? Thank you. Now we're going to the same section, confidential business, adjournment into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that council adjourns in the closed session, the recording of the meeting being suspended, and members of the press and public be excluded from the closed session with access to correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session being withheld unless declassified by separate resolution, noting that it's taken in accordance with section 10A2 of the Local Government Act, relating to item C being information that would confer commercial advantage on a person who council is conducting or proposing to conduct a business.
Thank you. Is
So
there a second?
second.
Thank you, councillor Elsa. Thank you to the Preston Gallery for attending.
Open session that press and gallery be readmitted and recording be recommenced, and that council be reported to the open session.
I'll just report on the business of the closed council. Thank you, councillor and Mayor. If I can, in accordance with item 12.1, in accordance with the provision of the Local Government Act regulation, council accepts the tender from White Civil Construction Proprietary Limited to carry out reconstruction works of High Darling Road in an amount of $531,400.40, including GST. And further to that, item 12.2, the Upara Road construction works. That council, in accordance with the provision of the Local Government General Regulation, accepts the tender once again from White Civil Construction Proprietary Limited to carry out construction work on the Upara Road for an amount of $512,763, including GST. And that concludes the business of the closed council.
Thank you. Next council meeting, however, we look like we will be having a special meeting council, so be prepared for that. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for being there virtually. Thank you, the council, for attending today, and I'll close the meeting.
Are we having the meeting afterwards about the roads or?
Yes, we've got this other, 1 o'clock. I think we've got this.